In this video, we're going to talk about securing mobile and embedded devices. Now, the terms mobile devices and embedded devices oftentimes mean similar things, if not the exact same thing. So a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about here kind of cross between the two environments. Well, let's first start talking about mobile devices. Now, mobile devices started off way back in the day when we first started talking about laptops. You may not have been around when laptops first came around, but they used to be basically just desktops with a monitor attached to it. Nowadays, they are literally mobile devices. You can pick them up, you can carry them around, take them from one place to another, and they weigh almost nothing. Probably the next version of something that's smaller as far as a mobile device would be a tablet. Windows tablets are used quite a bit in the world today. They are either Windows, Apple, Android, whatever type of tablet you might possibly want. They're really handy as far as just watching something online, watching a movie, looking at Facebook or some other social media, or even doing work on. Some of the newer laptops have high quality screens and can be used by artists to do full-blown video and picture editing on them. Kind of the next step down between after laptops and tablets would be our phones. Now, the stat I was just looking at said something about 92% of people, I think it said 20 to 30 years old, had a smartphone of some sort. I'm pretty sure that number seems a little low, considering the fact that I know several people in what would be considered a third world country have smartphones because they're cheaper to use than, tablets or laptops, and yet you can still do quite a bit of work on them. As we keep getting smaller, we then start talking about wearable devices, and these are things like your smartwatches, your some sort of a health system that's maybe watching your heart rate or watching you breathe, other types of wearable devices such as step counters and whatnot to help track your health stats as you're using them. Wearable devices a long time ago were considered kind of the perfection as far as computers were concerned. That was actually before tablets and phones started coming over, so the wearable devices now are just kind of healthcare related systems. Mobile devices, GPS. Oh my goodness, I would get so lost if I did not have a GPS in my car. More specifically, my GPS is my phone, but it could still count as a mobile device since I could have a fully dedicated GPS with a cellular connection attached to it. And then lastly, industrial tools. And I say industrial tools as kind of a catch-all. You've probably been to the store where they are using little scanners to scan the products as you're going through the checkout, or just even to scan what kind of products are on the shelves. These would be types of industrial tools. Beyond that, delivery drivers such as FedEx and UPS, they use some scanners for their systems in order to scan when packages go out and come in, as well as modified phones and tablets in order to do the same thing. So all of these are mobile devices, and they're mobile because, they're mobile. They're considered mobile devices because you can pick them up and move them around. And they normally have some sort of a network connectivity option built into them. Some of these are satellites, such as the GPS unit. Definitely has to use a satellite connection. However, some of those other mobile devices, such as your phone or your tablet, could also use a GPS connection as well. Sorry, not GPS, a satellite connection as well, in order to connect up to the internet. Wi-Fi is probably one of the most popular ones, especially for home and business users. Wi-Fi is pretty much everywhere. Bluetooth, very popular as far as keeping track of where you are as far as GPS is concerned, as well as what devices you have nearby and getting access to additional devices such as the stereo in your car. Infrared, still not as common as it used to be, but still very much possible, especially when you start talking back on the prior slide about the industrial devices. In infrared, it definitely very much is line of sight, and therefore not as robust or reliable as some of these other connectivity types. However, it does have very specific uses where it could be helpful. And then there's other types of mobile connectivity out there. It could be some sort of a PAN type or personal area network on your system, on your person, or on, say, built into your car, or it could be a mixture of both wired and wireless, to where one mobile device connects to another mobile device wired via wired connection, and then the other one connects via wireless. So it could be a lot of different connectivity types. So now that we've talked about mobile devices and how they communicate, well, let's talk about some vulnerabilities. And for this, I'm kind of breaking this down with the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality: when we're talking about mobile devices, communications can be intercepted, especially when you're talking about mobile devices that connect to other mobile devices. For instance, I was reading an article talking about a smartwatch. Smartwatch help track your location, help track your health state, whether you exercised a lot, what your heart rate is, and then it connects up to your cell phone and then connects up to the internet. Well, the communications between your smartwatch and your phone may or may not be secured. Therefore, those communications could be intercepted. Well, if I can intercept those communications, then I can see exactly what your smartwatch is doing. I can see what your other mobile devices might be doing, such as your industrial devices or whatnot. And then I can start reading that information, breaking the confidentiality that you might expect in there. Along with confidentiality, the storage on that device could be read. It's a very popular story that several years ago, when Apple was requested by the FBI to find a way to break their built-in encryption. Somebody had an iPhone and they were doing something wrong with it, and they encrypted the phone. They encrypted the data on the phone. So the FBI came to Apple and said, hey, can you please decrypt all this code on here? We need to see what else he's doing. Maybe he's doing even more than what we think he is. And Apple said no. So confidentiality, however, is still a big concern, because even though Apple said no, it wasn't very long after that somebody else found a way to get the information. So confidentiality on mobile devices is very much in question because, well, worst case scenario, I could steal your device and then try to find the data that's on it. Speaking of stolen devices, we can then start talking about integrity. Now, integrity is basically saying the person that sent this to me is the person that sent this to me. And there's very little doubt as far as who actually sent it to me. Who or when or where sent it to me. If a device is stolen, however, for instance, if it is my phone, if it's Ed's phone and it's stolen, then whoever's sending emails or phone calls from my phone isn't me. So the integrity of a mobile device is not always that great, because the device could literally be stolen. Along with being stolen, it could be taken and then returned so that I didn't even know my phone was used. That could raise some big concerns for me. Along with integrity, the communications modified. So we talked up here about the communications being intercepted and then viewed. Down here, we're talking about them being modified. Again, if I have some sort of a health device that says, this person traveled this much, and I'm actually able to intercept and modify that communications, then yeah, I just ran 20 miles. My smartwatch tells me that, and my heart rate never went above 60 the entire time. Yeah, so give me really good health insurance, because I'm really active and my health is perfect. Yeah. But if that information can be modified, then maybe the integrity isn't fully there. Going into that, jailbreaking. I wasn't really quite sure where to put this as far as confidentiality or integrity, but jailbreaking, normally there is some security built into mobile devices, specifically with phones and tablets. the operating system is protected to some degree. If I jailbreak that operating system, I can then start making it say all kinds of things I want it to do. For instance, I might want to change my GPS location. Up here, I was nope, not there. Up there, I was talking about changing the communications to make it think I ran. Here, if I jailbreak it, I can suddenly start spoofing the GPS location with a script or a program that makes it think that I'm constantly in the move. So suddenly I'm no longer sitting on my couch watching TV. Now I'm running around the neighborhood and they could actively see my location as I'm moving. But I'm still sitting on the couch. I just jailbroke the application in order to allow me to spoof my location. So the integrity is still of question. By the way, jailbreaking is great for a lot of people. A lot of situations where jailbreaking is helpful and helps get you kind of out from under the thumb of the vendor. However, it does also break a lot of the security that's built into it. So all of these other issues up here as far as confidentiality and the communications being modified are put at risk if you try to do that. And then lastly, availability. Mobile devices, they have a battery. Batteries only last for so long. There could be connectivity issues, especially when we start looking at the different types of devices out there of connectivity. Let's actually go back. If we're talking GPS connectivity, we are literally getting a signal from a satellite, and satellite signals are not very strong. Those are really easy to fake and cause them to be worthless, unusable. Same thing with Wi-Fi. Bluetooth is really, really common in order to intercept these and make them unusable for end users. So a lot of availability issues, not even to mention the fact that oftentimes mobile devices, in order to be used mobilely, are very small and therefore could easily get lost. My phone is in my car somewhere. I can hear it ringing. I can't find it. So there's a lot of questions as far as the possible available issues. All right, so that's some of the vulnerabilities we might see with mobile devices. Let's talk about securing them. These are maybe some best practices. And so first one, use a full disk encryption. I was really surprised. The last cell phone that I got actually came with full disk encryption enabled as soon as I powered it on. This wasn't something I ended up having to go hunting through the menus in order to enable. I did hunt through the menus to enable it, but I found that it was already enabled. So full disk encryption, put that everywhere. There's literally no reason to not use full disk encryption nowadays. Second one, lockdown and disable features. This kind of goes back to the prior slide here about jailbreaking. If I can't let my users do anything beyond what they're specifically supposed to be able to do, then they can't, hopefully, jailbreak the device and make it less secure. Same thing with disabling the various features. This is really useful in like business environments. Or industrial environments where there are very specific devices and they have a job, and hey, this device over here, this is a price scanner. It's supposed to be used for scanning prices and uploading the quantity of product in a store. It has the feature to connect to the internet, but I don't want you to browse the internet off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and disable the internet browsing features and lock down the device so that you can't use that device for that feature. Utilize some screen lock and authentication mechanisms. Most people are, I hope everybody already has this on their phones. Screen lock, basically automatically lock the screen after so many minutes of unuse. Not only is that useful for corporate or industrial devices, but that is extremely useful for home cell phones and tablets. Cell phones specifically because everybody puts their cell phone in their pocket. And if your screen locks automatically, then it's not going to try to pocket dial somebody. Authentication, there's tons of different ways you can authenticate people, all depending on what you need it to do and how secure you actually need that device to be. You could require a password in order to log in. You could have a PIN requirement, some sort of swipe pattern. You've probably seen that where people are drawing O's or U's or X's on their screen. Fingerprint readers, facial recognition, all really great ways to be able to do authentication for the devices. Additionally, you can also have what's called trusted devices or trusted locations. For instance, maybe your building, your corporate building, is a trusted location, and therefore the device is unlocked as soon as that device goes into the corporate building. And it pairs the GPS information along with maybe Wi-Fi in order to identify, yes, this is a trusted location. Or a trusted device. For instance, maybe your cell phone, you always use it for GPS. Therefore, you have it pair up with your car's radio, and therefore it's listed as a trusted device. As soon as you start your car, your phone unlocks and GPS is working. By the way, this can also be used with what's called geofencing, which is kind of the opposite of unlocking and authentication. Geofencing basically says this device will only work inside of this location, and therefore if I take it outside of this location, it will stop working to some degree. Let's see. Next, encrypt data in transit. So we'll pair that one up with full disk encryption, which is data at rest. Data in transit. Sometimes this isn't quite as obvious as you might hope it would be. Basically, it's saying making sure that all of my devices communicate over secure channels. Now, granted, depending on the applications you're using, you may not have a choice in this, but when you do, definitely make sure you go with the one that has that option. And then lastly, especially if you're in some sort of a business environment, use some sort of a mobile device management capability. There's a lot of different types of mobile device management. There's app management, there's container management, there's some sort of a mobile device management tool allows you for a centralized management view of all the devices in your environment. This allows you to set up secure containers. So basically, you could set up an MDM type management on somebody's personal device, such as their personal cell phone, personal laptop, or personal tablet. And a secure container allows you to have literally a container that is secure on that device that you as the admin control. At that point, you can install apps, you can remove apps, you can change permissions on apps for everything in that container. Along with that, you can do some location tracking. This can be useful if you have mobile workers, for instance, road construction workers. If they are traveling around from construction site to construction site, location tracking can be useful to help make sure, yes, they are actually working. They're at such and such site, or they just left that site and they're moving over to this site, so they'll be there in 10 minutes. It could be helpful for providing services to people to make sure you know where your employees are. Additionally, it can also help you if things disappear. If devices disappear, you can say, oh, well, it was last seen in our parking lot, so maybe it's in somebody's car, or it was last seen at Joe's house, and therefore let's go to Joe and ask him what he's seen with that device. And then along with mobile device management, there's also oftentimes the ability to do a remote wipe. And you can do this today with most cell phone devices, most cell phones, where I can go online and say, where's my iPhone or where's my Android, and I can try to find the location of my device. And if I can't find it, or if it's in an unknown location, I can then specify a remote wipe. It's not ideal to have to wipe somebody's cell phone or wipe somebody's tablet or other mobile device, but it's possibly better than the alternative of somebody stealing your corporate data or private data and using that for other purposes. So these are kind of just best practices as far as securing the mobile devices. Oddly enough, one thing that I just realized is not in here is screen protectors. Screen protector and cases. There we go. One of the main concerns with security is availability, then the availability will only last as long as I don't drop that device. So put a screen protector on all your devices, put a case around all of your devices so that when somebody invariably drops it, it won't crash and break in one day. All right, so that's mobile devices. Let's then talk about some embedded devices. Now, you're going to look at this list of embedded devices and you're going to think, well, that's pretty much the same as mobile devices. And a lot of times it is. But some of these embedded devices you may already be aware of. Embedded, meaning it's built into the components of a device. It's kind of built into the firmware of a device. It's not really something that you install an operating system on. Some of these, such as webcams, there's internet-enabled webcams out there. You just point to with a web browser and you access it directly. You didn't have to install any software on the device. It just worked out of the box. Same thing with smart TVs. You say, show me such and such off of Netflix, and it shows you that episode. Embedded devices, smart light bulbs, smart thermostats, smart assistants, smart doorbells, locks, outlets, smart everything. I guess that's kind of the key word there. Smart. These are all considered embedded devices. From an industrial side, we have some SCADA. Let's see, we got these guys right here. SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition, something like that. Devices that are used in pretty much all industrial environments. Basically, if you have a power plant of some sort or nuclear plant or any kind of a military operation, you're working with SCADA systems. Automotive systems. There are tons of embedded devices built into your car. Everything from the pressure sensors for your tires to make sure that they have pressure, all the way up through reporting whether your brake lights are working or not. And then healthcare devices. We already talked a little bit about our smartwatches, but there could be like heart monitors and things like that are considered to be embedded devices. Beyond that, let's see, environmental sensors. So what's the CO2 in this environment, and then alarm if something is bad, and wireless keyboards and mice. Pretty much anything that just works. You just turn it on, and it works. These embedded devices are really great because, like I said, you turn them on and they work. However, they have some issues. Primary issue probably is that they have few to zero updates. For instance, when was the last time you got an update for your keyboard? Maybe never. When was the last time you got told to install firmware for your car? Probably never. If you may have gotten like maybe a recall from the car vendor and they've done it without necessarily telling you, but you probably never actually said, oh, I need to plug my car into the internet so we can download an update to. Next one, poor security built in. A lot of these devices, they are built literally to the cheapest, sent out to the cheapest vendor. Pretty much whoever can get something out there quick and cheap is going to be the one that does it. Along with that, kind of paired together with that is a short lifespan, specifically with regards to support. Maybe they are doing updates. Maybe they are sending out some updates out to the environment, which is yay. However, chances are they're only going to be doing that for a short period of time. And you may have actually seen this with regards to, say, your cell phone. You may have gotten updates for your cell phone, and they probably happen quite regularly for the first 6 months to a year that you own the cell phone. However, after a year, maybe 2 of using your cell phone, the updates just stop. And it's just a short lifespan of support of that device because it's not really worthwhile to them to continue to support something that they expect you to have gotten rid of at that point. And then may have embedded vulnerabilities. And this is really a big concern for a lot of people. Maybe I'm buying my embedded devices. Maybe I'm buying a, let's see, what do we got there? There we go, healthcare. Maybe I'm buying a heart monitor from a company in the US, but they have embedded some other piece of technology from North Korea, China, name your country, name your non-US country. And therefore that embedded portion, maybe it's just a processor, maybe it's a piece of memory, who really knows, that may have a vulnerability embedded into it intentionally. And therefore my heart monitor is now vulnerable to something because, I don't know. Yeah, because it was built in from day one. So if those are our issues, well, what are our best practices as far as embedded devices? And a lot of the best practices are going to be very similar to what you saw with best practices for mobile devices. First one, use trusted vendors. And a lot of this you'll see, like, it's called a supply chain management. And really the idea there is just to have trusted vendors, trust vendors that you know are going to deliver secure product. They're not going to embed any kind of vulnerability in there, and that they will get you the right devices working properly. Supply chain management is probably one of the reasons why everybody freaks out when they see how much the government is spending on various products. And they may think, hey, I can go out and I can buy a computer for $1,000. Well, why does it cost the government $2,000? Well, part of that is the supply chain management. Maybe it's worth spending that extra money to make sure that they have a trusted device from a trusted vendor. I'm completely estimating on those prices. Don't take my word for it. Next one, place embedded devices on a secured network, and this might be more related to you and your home environment as well as in business environments. Right now, we probably all have Wi-Fi at home. So I have Wi-Fi at home, and in my home I have multiple embedded devices, several IoT type devices, and they are all on one network, which is not necessarily all that great. Because what if that light bulb that I had that automatically turns on when I walk into the room, what if that has a vulnerability in it? If there's a vulnerability in that light bulb, then that means they can hack the light bulb, which then gives them access to my Wi-Fi, which then gives them access to everything else in my house, which probably has a lot of tie-ins to my email and my business email, and therefore is a big, huge mess. So put embedded devices onto a separate secured network. Keep them completely separate. If you're using Wi-Fi, set up 2 different Wi-Fis. If you're using physical networks, use VLANs, and then use some sort of a micro segmentation between them. Install updates. Install updates routinely, and this is, that kind of goes hand in hand with installing updates on Windows and Linux and Macs. Do it routinely. And problem's going to come over again back to these guys over here of short lifespan, poor security, few to no updates. Are the updates really going to be there? Kind of goes back up to the using trusted vendors. Well, okay, so you bought an IoT device, you bought some sort of a smart plug, and you spent $50 for it. Why did you do that when you can buy one for $5 off of Amazon? Well, maybe it's from a trusted vendor who I know is going to be there for the next 5 years for the lifespan of this device. Speaking of lifespan of device, have a replacement plan. In a lot of environments, there are always there's oftentimes what's referred to as an escape plan or an end game with a product or with a solution. For instance, when you go to buy stock, when are you going to sell it? What's your end game? How are you going to get out, whether it goes up or down? By having that plan before you get in, makes it easier to get out when those needs are met. So if you have a replacement plan, if you know that this vendor is only going to support this smart plug or this heart monitor for 5 years, then you go into it knowing that that device will last you at the maximum of 5 years. The device may physically last longer, but they no longer support it, therefore you need to replace it. So having a replacement plan built in as you get the device is very beneficial to make sure you get the best service out of that device and stay secure throughout it. And then lastly, change the default passwords. Everybody knows password 01. And all the variations of password with P at $0W or W0RD. Everybody knows all of those. And they are very, very common out on the internet. Just a simple look for common passwords or even default password for X device. So common password for Linksys Wi-Fi router, and you will find the common passwords and login info for that Linksys Wi-Fi router. So change the default passwords as much as possible. Again, this also comes back up to using trusted vendors, because you have to make sure that the only passwords on that device are the documented passwords. Kind of coming back to the embedded vulnerabilities. Okay, you've told me there's an admin password. Is that the only admin password? Is there any other account on here I need to know about and I need to change the password? So as long as there's just the one, then you can change it and you're all set. If there's more than one that you're not aware of, you can only change the ones you're aware of. Still do it, and then make sure you have a plan. I'll clear this out. Make sure you have an update plan so that if additional passwords, additional user accounts are identified for those devices, you can log in with those and then change them appropriately. So there you go, talking about securing mobile and embedded devices. Again, mobile and embedded devices pretty much go hand in hand at this point, since mobile devices are somewhat embedded, but some distinctions between them, but they all have pretty much the same best practices amongst all of them.